Okay, so this is the sixth lecture on the chapter of the middle child or middle childhood. And this lecture, we're going to start talking about some of the personality and the social development. So we've already gotten past the point where a kid is beginning to understand the self. So they have a concept of the self. And this is really important because moving forward, when they understand their self and the relationship between them and others, we can then begin to influence or shape their behavior. We can use, for instance, like empathy and such, because they can, their emotional awareness, right? So empathy and shame and things like this. Okay, so the kid's sense of self, we moved from what's called, now we're moving into something called a representational system. So now a child can articulate things like that they have different parts of themselves, that they may be a good athlete, but not so good academically, or they may be good at math, but not so good at reading. So they have this multi-dimensional understanding and this difference between the real self versus the ideal self. So I'd like to be better at softball, but I'm not very good at softball, maybe with a little bit more practice, right? And this is more of a, so you'll remember a few chapters back, a kid was like, I can jump high, I'm a good kid, had a one-dimensional self. The crisis, this is likely to be on a quiz. The crisis from Erickson's model of how we go through these different stages here is industry versus inferiority. And what that means is that the child is struggling or whatever the crisis is, can they contribute valuable? Do they have a valuable contribution? So to help a child successfully move through the stage in life, they need to be given opportunities to be successful at helping the group. Right? So we give them chores that they can successfully do. We give them a pet that they can successfully take care of, because and I believe that's integrity. I think that's the outcome. Because the other option of that, I think, is shame, where they can become overly industrious, like workaholics, or feel like they can't do anything. So we want them to have this sense of industry, that they can successfully contribute to the group, that gives them place and worth, and people count on them. Okay, emotionally and pro-social behavior. Remember, pro-social behavior, this is also a really important term for the whole chapter, and hopefully in your psych class you got it too. Pro-social means helping behavior. I do have it underlined. This is an anti-social behavior, is not, I don't want to be with people, but anti-social behavior is the opposite of helping behavior. Pro-social, you help people. Antisocial, you harm people. Okay, so because of this emotional understanding of the self, now we can experience shame and guilt when the self doesn't do what is expected of them. And these can be very useful tools for manipulating a child's behavior. A child learns appropriate emotional expression. They know that there's certain places, certain people are allowed to emote, certain places, certain emotions are not acceptable here. An increasing ability to relate to other people through empathy. And this consequently then can predict if they help other people. Now, keeping in mind that the goal here is industry, or the crisis is industry versus inferiority, and how successfully a child feels like they can contribute to the group, then can predict their self-esteem. Self-esteem is defined as my worth, the worth that I believe I have, my regard for myself, my self-worth, my self-esteem. Self-esteem predicts pro-social behavior. So what this suggests is, if a child is given opportunities to successfully contribute to the group, they will be more helpful to the group, right? Because the crisis, industry inferiority, successful contribution makes me feel good about myself. Feeling good about myself is self-esteem. How much self-esteem I have predicts if I am going to help other people. So we help a child contribute to the group, and they will be more helpful to the group. Becomes sort of this, there's so much like sociology overlap here, right? When we integrate people, they're more likely to follow the rules. They're more likely to work for the group. I mean, it's just, okay. Here's another conversation about a group, right? The family. Your family is your primary agent of socialization. It is the first group that you're a part of, right? It's one layer of Bronfenbringer's model. We've already talked about that. The atmosphere of the family. Is there conflict? How is conflict reconciled? Is there conflict and discord? We'll predict, does a child internalize conflict? So internal or externalize conflict. Internalizing conflict results in things like anxiety, fearfulness, depression. All of this discord, do I turn it inward? Do I blame myself? Or do I externalize it? Externalize it results in aggression, fighting, hostility, and it's all thought to be predicted by if there is conflict or lack of conflict or peace in this primary agent of socialization. During this stage, we're also shifting from a kind of parent-child relationship where a child controls all aspects of the life. I mean, think about preschool, what you eat, what you wear, when you get up, where you go, right? To co-regulation. And co-regulation is a kind of parent-child interaction where the parent has general oversight of what's the kid is doing, but the kid gets to decide moment by moment. Am I watching TV? Am I playing in my room? Are my socks on? Do I go to the bathroom? Can I play outside? Can I eat a snack, right? So as opposed to before this, every little aspect, but now you get a kid and, in some cases, I don't know what grade you were at home alone after school. I started walking home by myself in the 4th grade, right? There's a lot of independent moment by moment decision making. Now the parents still offer the global oversight. Okay, so this can lead to positive relationships with parents, and because of the child's emotional development, right? Because of that crisis of industry and inferiority, now a parent can use something called inductive discipline. And think about what this word is. I think you probably can figure out where you induce certain feelings. I don't know if your mother was, but my mother was the queen of guilt. That is a form of inductive discipline, right? You control, I keep thinking manipulate, that's kind of what you're doing. You're manipulating a child's behavior by inducing certain feelings. You're inducing feelings of, how do you think that would feel? Feelings of empathy. Or was it, say, appeal to self-esteem or your moral values? How would a smart boy like you deal with that problem? Or how do you think your father would have you deal with that problem? So you do less control of a child's behavior, but you do more inducement of their feelings, right? Emotional manipulation, for lack of a better word. Also important during this time is or at least discussed in your chapter, is the role of working parents. And I get a little prickly when we're always talking about working mothers, right? What about working fathers? But I think the message is that the difference between having one parent in the labor force versus having two parents in the labor force. And because when two parents are in the labor, mom historically, though these trends are beginning to shift. But what the pattern does say, and what the social science does support, is a child will adapt better to both parents working, depending on why the parent is working, how the parent feels about working, if there's available childcare. In other words, if a mother doesn't want to she's miserable going to work, she has to go to her second shift job, there's no one at home to take care of the kids when she goes to work, probably won't be very good experience. On the other hand, if a mother loves the part-time job that she gets to take during the day, and it makes her a happier wife and parent, right, and it doesn't interfere with the child's school schedule, there are really different implications for both parents working, right? So, again, it's that Bronfenbringer's model, right? The job that a parent has will influence family life, which will then influence the way the kids adapt. What does it say about poverty? Well, let's just think about this. Poverty is overall difficult for anyone, right? Difficult for parent or child. However, I don't want to suggest that poor parents can't take care of their kids. That is not the fact that they're poor. The issue is that poverty makes it difficult to meet other needs, such as healthcare needs, safe housing, right? There is nothing inherently wrong with being poor, but poverty makes it difficult to get the things that you need. And culture says that there's certain things that parents are supposed to do for their children. So desperate people will do desperate things. Poverty is a complicating variable, but it doesn't mean that poor people can't be good parents or that there's anything wrong with a poor family. It just makes everything more complicated. I'm going to stop right